Welcome back. In case you're just joining us, I'm having a lovely conversation about mental health with Sandra, a lovely lady who has gone through it all since she was a child, and definitely the ending is happy, or the journey to the end is quite happy. And we're joined by our expert of the day, Lorna, a child psychologist who will give us perspective into mental health and children, a topic I feel like we haven't really touched, because I think it's important to start this conversation from the ground up. Lorna, karibu sana.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
It's
I'm
really
glad to be
good
here.
to see you.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow, how is work? How is everything going?
Overwhelming.
Yes.
I think mental health issues to do with anything based on mental health is really coming up right now.
Yes.
COVID was
Yes.
actually a plus for us.
Yes.
Because now people are reaching out more. People
Wonderful.
are coming.
Yes.
And now the stigma of even men. Nowadays, men are flocking,
Yes.
counseling
Yes.
facilities.
Yes.
And for me, I'm encouraged.
Yes.
But of course, it's a bit overwhelming.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I, like you said, I think it's a very good thing.
Yeah.
In as much as COVID may be the worst thing that happened
Yeah.
to everybody in the world, I think it has, shifted the perspective, especially on mental health.
Yeah.
Well, being a child psychologist, I think it's a topic that hasn't been tackled too well, and it was interesting how Sandra, our guest here, got her first panic attack when she was only in nursery school. So I'm thinking of a 4 or 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I can't imagine them having, an anxiety attack. Could you walk us through when mental health issues, problems start with kids? When is it too early, or just unpack for us the age bit?
Okay.
Yes.
So one thing one must understand about mental health is just like any health, like physical health,
Yes.
how nowadays you'd say even like, for example, arthritis attacks even young children.
Young children, yes.
So it's very important for us to know that mental health is not different from any other health.
Yes.
So with mental health, we must understand that as soon as a baby is born, they can be affected by mental health.
Yes.
Because mental health is affected in 3 ways. We have through the genetics,
Yes.
the genes of the
Yes.
of the mother, or the
Yes.
genes of the father,
Yes.
or the family members. Maybe if there's a history of depression, history of anxiety, maybe panic attacks, and so on and so forth. Then we have environment. Where is this child staying?
Yes.
For example, you can imagine a young child of around maybe 1 or 2 years who has lost both parents, like just
Yes.
recently about the Navy
Yes.
accident.
Yes.
There's a man who talked about losing, the wife and the child. So you can imagine, for example, loss of a parent, or
yes.
loss of even family, or maybe like during this period, of course, we are not
Yes.
hoping for that. Maybe
Yes.
election,
Yes.
post-election violence, and so on and so
yes.
forth. This could affect the child. So as early as the child is born, the child needs to be protected. And I'm happy, as I was listening to Sandra, I had her talking about, her first priority with her son is to ensure that mental health, as young as he is, that
Yes.
mental health is her priority,
Yes.
because she knows that, of course, the first part of the genetics may affect the child. Then the third one is the personality of the child.
Yes.
That, of course, stems from how the child is, born.
Yes.
So maybe a personality of a child may be born with a certain personality, which may make the child vulnerable to either mental disorder, for
Yes.
example, anxiety or
Yes.
depression.
Yes.
And that's why nowadays you find very many children, especially between the ages of around 8 years to around 13 years, being affected a lot by depression. One, of course, it's our education system and
Yes.
how, things are going really
they're going
fast,
so
such
fast.
that, a child right now in grade 6 is studying
Yes.
for a
Yes.
national exam.
Yes.
Shock,
Yes.
there's a bit of, they are not
Yes.
prepared,
Yes.
we are not
Yes.
looking into the, for us parents, we think that a child is just someone you tell what to do, but they also have a say in what
True.
they are feeling. So
True.
they might come to you and tell you, I'm not feeling okay. Like as she said, her parents were always telling her, you're just seeking for attention, you just want attention. But in actual sense, this child is crying out for help.
True.
And usually the first step of mental health is when a child cries out for help. When you see a child behaving not normal to how a normal child should
Yes.
behave. For
Yes.
example, a child of maybe 3 years old, not being able to play, you know, comes home clean, and you're really excited as a parent, you know, my child is very clean. That's a cause for concern. What is happening to my child? Is it really that there's something that the child is fearing? It could be blood. It could be maybe an accident or something. Like I have a young client, he is 6 years old, and he has not played for the past, I think, 3 years. So the last time he played was when, just before the mom passed on, and he saw the mom being wheeled away in blood. Yeah, and that was the last time this child saw the mother. So that is why the child is not able to play with the friends, because the first thought that comes into his head is, I'll get blood and I'll die. So such a child, the dad has just been encouraging him, why are you not playing, and wondering, you know, my child is so perfect, he doesn't play. But there was a problem. So by the time the child was coming, it's 3 years down the line, and the child is now more affected than maybe if he was brought the first time when this child was going through something. So it starts immediately when the child is born, taking care of that mental health, the same way you go for clinics for physical health, trying to ensure the child doesn't get measles or all these conditions that we look out to. We also need to look at the child's mental health. What's the environment? You know, am I in somewhere where there's so much noise, the child is not even able to sleep, the child is crying throughout the day? What kind of environment am I raising my child?
Wow, such an eye-opener for me, because and very emotional as well, because personally I've gone through my own you know, traumatic you know, space in my life, and I could see how it was affecting especially my older child, until I changed the environment, and suddenly he was, you know, happy, and he could play, he's very confident. And I'm so glad you've said they need to come home dirty.
Yes, they really do.
They really need to come home dirty. But I think it's also important to let them speak out. Sometimes they may not speak out, it's in their behavior. All right, so wow, I'm just curious, what's your youngest client? Who or how is it that you see a child being brought in, and you know, how do you even differentiate between that maybe 3-year-old and maybe a 13-year-old? How does it work?
Okay, so I've been doing counseling for 6 years, and I basically major in child psychology. So I see children from the age of at least a child who is able to speak, is able to talk. The rest are usually seen by therapists, maybe at the hospital, because I'm a counseling psychologist, so I also major as a psychologist. So sometimes those ones are seen through the hospital. There's not much you can do, maybe just play therapy, like learning what is Israel thinking, for example. Is he able to play well? How is he playing? Is he, you know, because play is, we know how a child is supposed to play. So most importantly is that I use play therapy and art therapy, because as 6 or 7-year-old, I cannot talk to that child. I cannot sit them as I could sit with you and ask you, how are you feeling today? The child will look at me like, okay, why am I here? So what I do is that I create an environment, a very you know, colorful environment, with games and play items, dolls and toys and maybe art things, for example, drawing books and colored pencils, and I just help the child. You know, I have to also be a child, because you know, you can't be seated at a chair and tell the child play. So you have to like get to their level and actually play with them and try to understand what is happening to this child. So you might find a child who is being traumatized at home, going through abuse, will be hitting the dolls or will be hitting the cars, and you want to ask. Of course, it's a conversation. It's not just play. It's a conversation with this child. Like, for example, what is going on? Why is that car hitting this other car? Then the child will explain to you, that's how my dad's car hit another car, and my dad died. And you know, that story is what leads you to sessions. So basically all the sessions are play therapy, and we put in a bit of art, like you can tell them draw yourself, and you'll find a child drawing themselves at the corner of the page, a little small person, so that of course you know that child is disturbed or feels inadequate or is already going through low self-esteem. So I've seen a child of around 3 years, 3.5 years, and that is just what we do, play therapy and so on and so forth. Okay, I've seen a child of around 1.5 years, but we didn't really do therapy. I just did an assessment for the parents, just to ensure the parents just wanted to know, is there something wrong? And of course, I was able to give them a good assessment, and we were able to take it to the hospital for further treatment.
Yes, because I feel like in terms of child psychology, there's a lot of neglect, because we feel, and even myself, I've ever thought, should I, because I do therapy, should I take my kids as well? But every time I'm like, what are they going to say
Yeah,
in there?
yeah.
So it's good to paint at least a picture to parents out
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and maybe bring it closer home and ask. Ideally, even when there's a traumatic event, for instance, of a child, and you feel your child is going through something,
Yeah.
what are some of these things you can do at home to help them, express themselves before they come to see you, to help them even just have an environment of, I mean, think about it, it could be maybe a traumatic event at school, but at home, the environment, it's perfect. What are some of these things you can encourage the kids to do at home?
Okay, most importantly is to make your child your friend. That's the first thing.
Yes.
Now, nowadays we are living in a society, and I have to accept that we're living in a society where we are very busy. Life has become, we are crying every day, flap prices are up, I don't know, fuel prices are up. And so life has become very difficult. So we are leaving a lot of the parenting to either the house managers or to maybe other people, like maybe younger sisters. Nowadays you find younger siblings coming in to parent your child. So most importantly is to look for time for those kids. I'm not saying 100% because we know the society we are living in, and we must be realistic. So most importantly is to look for time with your child. How much time are you spending with your child? You know, sometimes when you even see when a parent is bringing the child to therapy, they don't even have time to even, they're like, I'll come, I'll drop them, and I always tell the parent, you must stay behind. You must sit there, even if it's in the car, wait for the child so that the child feels like, you're not just bringing them to a sort of punishment, because they did something wrong, or they were naughty, and you've realized there's a bit of conduct disorder, and so you're realizing that, I'm being punished for something I did. So most important is to make your child your friend, and ensure that as much as possible you know the difference between discipline and abuse. Because children nowadays, you just discipline them, but you don't tell them, why am I, for example, slapping you? Why am I giving you a timeout? Why am I telling you no TV for today? Is it a punishment? Because when they grow up, they tend to now be rebellious, because my mom said no TV, I'm going to watch all the TV that I want. Because my mom, for girls, this is very important. Because my mom never let me out, my dad never let me out. I'm going to see all the men in the world. I'm going to sleep with all of them, just to be rebellious, just to show them that, now I'm in control of my life. So ensure that as much as possible, talk to your children. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. Look for time, spend time. There's a certain parent who was telling me that the only way that they make friends with their child is when they're going out. So if it means you getting into your pocket and ensuring that you take your child out, take the child out, but don't compensate that for love. Don't show the child that I'm taking you out so I love you. I'm paying your school fees so I love you. Show the child that I actually love you. What is going on in school? And nowadays it is alarming that child abuse cases, defilement cases, sodomy cases, all these cases of children are happening in schools, are happening in churches, are happening in your home where you're out for work. For example, there's a parent who was telling me she goes on Monday and she comes back on Friday evening, and she doesn't know what goes on. And I told her, you know what, your child is being abused by the uncle who maybe was there to take care of the child. So we must ensure how safe is the environment my child is staying in. I know we are looking for money, but more importantly, I always tell parents that there are two things here. You either look for the money and suffer the consequences later and spend that money that you're looking so hard for, or go an extra mile and maybe deduct a bit of that and look for time for your kids, and later on you'll see the fruits of it. And nowadays you find, as I'm saying, 8 years to 13 years, depression cases have risen. For adolescents, we are kind of used to that. Now 8 years is a very young child to be going through depression. And I'm imagining by the time it's clinical depression, you're giving this child medication, so they have to take medication for depression, for anxiety, for conduct disorders, and so on and so forth. And so it becomes very difficult, even for us counselors, because you find by the time a child is coming into your session, they are almost at the end, And if you had brought this child way earlier, then I would have helped the child more than at this point where the child is completely at depression, not able to wake up, not able to eat, is maybe going thin. And nowadays you find even an 8-year-old girl is going through a food eating disorder, like bulimia nervosa, anorexia nervosa, which is becoming very sad.
Exactly. And I feel like also the age we're living in, with social media and all that, especially for girls, there's some unrealistic expectations on their appearance, and these kids are able to access social media and see the who's and who's looking a certain way, and they wonder, why don't I look the
Yeah,
same?
yeah.
Yes, so I like how you've unpacked it, and I love the fact that you've said, let your child be your friend. And in terms of spending time, let me share my own way of doing it. Every day, no matter what, I would rather even leave an event and come back home. But just before bedtime, an hour before bedtime, this play, pray, and lots of hugs and kisses, and we conversate. And you find, if I miss that, the boys are like, what are you talking about? Like, mommy, why didn't I get my hug? And you know, you just let them be, and it doesn't even cost so much. Of course, when I have more time, I will do it. Thank God for also schools, because there is a lot of you know, touching bases, but not every parent is able to have a school that is such a close environment and a family environment. And I think, Alona, what you do is heaven sent, because until a few years ago, I did not ever think of child psychology, because you know, we assume kids don't feel things. But can you imagine preventing it? I mean, I'm imagining a little 5-year-old, you know, having a full-blown panic attack, and it's yeah. And I think the other question I'll ask is, would you feel that also the society at large, meaning school, churches, the environments that now are away from home, should do? What are these things they should look out for? Because you've already unpacked for us the withdrawal, the silence, the cleanness, or just not being able to play. I have so many questions because I feel like it's when you're thinking your kid is safe enough, then you release them to the world and maybe they're not safe. But let's talk about the good side of it. What the teachers, like in her case, it took a whole motivational speaker to come and actually talk to them. And all this time you're thinking, most schools have counseling psychologists, no, counselors, but why are they not doing their work? What do you feel like that can be done differently?
Okay, we are really pushing, you know, from the government area to, you know, mental health is something, it's like somewhere far, you know, it's something that is, we are seeing it, but we're not seeing it. It's far and it's near at the same time. So we're really pushing for counseling psychologists in schools. Now, most times we have guidance, I think they call them guidance and counseling.
Yes.
These are teachers.
Yes.
So I'm imagining I'm teaching so-and-so and I teach mathematics and I'm tough and I'm the guidance and counseling teacher.
Yes.
3/4 of those children will not come
No,
to me.
99%.
Because how am I supposed to tell this child that, you know, you're very poor in mathematics and, you know, mathematics, I'm imagining my mathematics teacher was very mean. So my mathematics teacher is there telling me that come to me and I'll be able to help you. You know, it doesn't work. So we are really trying to push them to see whether they can get someone out of the counseling, completely out of the teaching profession and come in and bring in a formal teacher. I'm doing that in a certain school in our area, and I go there only 2 days in a week. So what I've done is I've trained the teachers already. So I do training for them at least every month on different issues. So they themselves are already up. You see, by the time the 2 days I'm coming, I'm only seeing that child who really needs that counseling. Because if I was to say I'm coming for 2 days, I won't be able to, it will be too much. So the teacher already sees this child and realizes this child is someone I can talk to. This is a child where I can do 1, 2, 3. And then there's this one who Counselor Lorna needs to see when she comes on this specific day. So by the time I'm coming, I have a list of, you know, children I need to see. And from then on, again, I also refer others to psychiatrists because there are those, of course, that are beyond my expertise. So most important is that schools need to understand that this thing is not just a family affair. You know, most people think, you know, if there's any mental health issues, send to the parents. But it starts with the school, because the school is where the child normally feels a bit more, has more time and feels more safe, because they feel like, you know, at home, you know, mom is there. I don't want to show mom that I'm having a panic attack, for example. And you see, for her, by the time she got her help through the school, you know, and by the time her parents realized it, the school had already pushed her around 3 or 4 steps ahead. So schools, churches, like in my local church, I have done that. I have a desk where I sit, I see children once in a while, at least once in a week, because they only come on Saturdays, and I'm able to see those children, and by the time they're coming, they haven't even told their parents yet, but we are able to sit down with them. I talk to them and I help them and help them to see. So if churches could also emulate a way in which they can have mental health, you know, like what she's doing is completely amazing. Yeah, you know, this kind of talks even to youths, you know, that every single Sunday there's a talk about mental health. Like in my local church, we have once in a month a talk on you know, various issues. And just the other day we were talking about loss and grief. You know, and everyone would think once you lose someone, you
That's
move
when
on.
you
And this girl came up to me and told me, you know, I lost my dad when I was 3 years old, and I've never healed. I mean, a 3-year-old child. I mean, you should feel like the child should be over it. She's now 19 years and she's still going through the grief. So more importantly is to ensure that this enters into the grassroots, the churches, the schools, the middle level, maybe colleges, for example. These things that we take for granted, you know, barazas for even, you know, I'm talking about the really, you know, maybe people from very poor families, you know, where they can come in and hear, oh, there's something called mental health, because you can imagine Mama Mboga doesn't maybe understand some of these things. So most importantly is to reach these kind of people through, of course, a lot of talk therapy, a lot of mentorship, trainings, and so on and so on. But this has to start even from the highest level, that's the government.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think you've already responded to a question I had in mind, like how do we reach, how do we go to the crux of the nation? Because like I'm sure you encounter a lot of people who would ideally not be able to come on. In fact, they wouldn't know where to start. Personally, I was also like you, Sandra, where I was self-helping until, in fact, I felt better. Then, whoa, this traumatic event happened and I slipped so bad. And I think the topic is not exhaustive, because we, I mean, other than, I mean, mental health is such a wide topic, other than not being able to conduct oneself in a normal manner in the day-to-day activities. There's also the aspect of suicidal thoughts, the other kinds of mental health, schizophrenia, dementia, and all that. And I hope we can be able to have another conversation another time. So before I finish with you, Lorna, Sandra, is there anything you'd like to say, you know, as we close up?
Yes, I'd like to just touch on a subject that she has talked about,
Yes.
Lorna, and that is gentle parenting. And that's something that I practice with my son. So when you are a parent, she said you have to distinguish between discipline and punishment. Sometimes they get crossed together. But when you're disciplining your child, you can do it in a gentle way, in a way that they will feel heard, seen, and they will feel like whatever you're doing is because I did this, and this is to teach me something. But when you go to the extent of punishment and abuse, it makes the child feel like they cannot open up to you. Even if I have a very big problem and maybe my parent is not practicing gentle parenting, I'd rather go to a stranger than talk to my parent. So that's just something that we as a nation, a society, we can focus more on, because also when I talk to people during the social contact activities, you'd be surprised at the number of people who say, no, I cannot tell my parents that I'm going through this. And you ask them why, because maybe my parent is not open. If I tell my parents that, they'll not even understand what I'm saying. So maybe that's something that we can try and practice more, gentle parenting.
Absolutely, and there's also a very thin line between gentle parenting and just spoiling the child.
Yes.
All right, Lorna, your final words?
Maybe for me, I could just leave an acronym for mental health issues, which is BRAVE, because her sitting here is just brave. So the first thing is B. B is for bodily symptoms. Remember, mental health also affects your physical health. So most importantly, if we take care of our mental health, then we take care of our physical health. Then R is for realistic expectations. For her, she knew that I've gone through depression, I've gone through anxiety, I'm going to get a child. It's realistic to take care of my mental health more than maybe another lady who was going through the same situation and didn't have to go through all that. Then we have acceptance. She has accepted that I am not okay, and it's okay not to be okay. I think that's usually the term that I use throughout. But I added something, as long as you don't give up. Because normally it's okay not to be okay, full stop. Then what happens? Then but as long as I don't give up. Then we have the V, which is for, you know, validation of your feelings, just ensuring that every time you're telling yourself, okay, today I'm not okay, but tomorrow will be better. And the last one is end, which is the most beautiful. That for her, she's talked about a very beautiful thing, that she said at the end of the day, this thing has come to an end. You know, I'm feeling better. I haven't gotten any relapse. So telling yourself that, you know, there's an end to all this. You know, you can't have pain all your life. There's a point where you're okay. So take care of yourself when you're okay, and take care of yourself when you're not okay.
Wonderful.
So brave.
Wow. I can't add more than what Lorna has said. Be brave as long as you don't give up. It's a beautiful acronym. I hope you remember. BRAVE, okay? I can't remember so much, but basically it's just accepting that you're in a situation, don't give up on it, and also look forward to validating your feelings, whether you're feeling low or up, and then eventually there's always an end if you don't give up. All right, so tonight has been amazing. We had a panel of beautiful, beautiful ladies who are all about mental health, and I hope that if you have a story to share, you can reach us on our social media pages at Y254, also on my personal social media pages, sorry, Maureen YT2, who has been your host tonight. It's been a pleasure, and until next time, bye-bye.